You can't build what you can't see. And that's the problem with leverage. Most professionals don't realize they have it, or they're neglecting it until they actually need it. You see someone get tapped for a bigger role or move laterally into something interesting or leave one company and land well somewhere else. And it completely looks effortless. It's usually not, but what you're seeing is leverage at work. And today I'm helping you identify where you already have leverage in your career and where you can build it. Welcome to Control Your Career. I'm Julia Toothacre, your strategic career consultant, and I'm so glad you're here. This season is all about career leverage, how your career evolves once credibility is established and you're ready to be strategic. In this episode, I'm going to define leverage in concrete terms. We're going to walk through 5 specific types of leverage, the leverage buckets I mentioned in the last episode: skill, reputation, market, financial, and decision leverage, so that you can see where you're already strong, where you already have some leverage, and where you might be over-relying on execution. By the end, you should have a clearer framework for evaluating your own positioning and understanding how much real choice you actually have in your career. Let's get into it. How do you know that leverage is present? We introduced this in the last episode, but I want to go a little bit deeper with it here. Leverage is really about outcomes in your career that you do not have to force to make happen. These are the situations where you get tapped for something, right? So you get tapped for a project, or you have a leader who says, hey, we need to bring her into this because I trust her, or I trust her judgment in these areas, or I've seen what she can do and I want to make sure that she has a voice here. In some cases, it's about transitions. And so it's somebody that can leave one company and land somewhere else without having to start over. You're essentially being pulled into a new company because of the work that you've done where you're at and the reputation that you have. And I think the biggest indicator of leverage for me, specifically with my clients, is when they can say no to something because it's misaligned and they're not risking anything. So they're not risking their career, they're not risking their reputation, they're not risking finances, nothing like that. They have the leverage to be able to say yes or no in their career. So remember, we're not talking about effort anymore, even though there are some areas where you still will need to have some effort. But leaders and decision makers, they are making these hiring decisions based on trust, visibility, and positioning. In so many cases, either they have seen you, like they have seen you do something, or somebody is recommending you based on something that they have seen. So if your career only moves when you apply, when you push yourself, or when you feel like you need to prove yourself to others, you're still mostly operating in execution. And it's not that you can't apply for that next step. You absolutely can. But what this is really about is making career moves because people think of you, they advocate for you, or they create room for you. They know that you're the right person for the position. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to ruffle some feathers. This is at a base concept what we talk about when we use the term the hidden job market. And some of you are going to say, that doesn't exist. It doesn't, blah, 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 blah. It does exist. And it's just different, looks different now than it did before. The hidden job market, to me, is really about you have made a name for yourself and people are creating positions for you because they know who you are. It's a hidden job market because it's not something that you will ever be able to apply for. It's something where they're creating positions that they know a person is going to go into. It doesn't mean that that position does not go live on their website and they accept applications for it, but that leader knows in advance who they are going to hire. That is leverage. That is the hidden job market as I see it now versus what it was probably 15 or 20 years ago. Okay. So I want to get into the leverage buckets. I want to dig a little bit deeper into each of these to help you understand what it is and whether or not you have leverage in these areas. So we're going to start off with skill leverage. I actually think this is one of the easiest, and I think people have more skills than they realize. They just have not taken the time to really identify how deep those skills go, how developed those skills are. So this is an area that I think you should be able to identify as an area of leverage for the most part. So using skills for leverage, I want you to think not just about the depth of a skill, but I want you to think about range. So a lot of times people who specialize in certain things, they have a very distinctive skill set. That is fine. That's absolutely a way to go in your career. Most positions these days require you to have a broader skill set. They require you to have some of the hard skills and the basics of that position or that position type, but they also require you to have certain people skills, certain management skills, all of that. So really consider the range of the skills that you have versus putting yourself into a singular bucket, because it's just going to create more leverage for you to move forward. One of the things that I see skill-wise is the ability to connect ideas across teams. I think that's a skill that when we're talking about leverage, a leader that can see that within you, they see that you are looking broadly. Now, not everybody has that naturally, but it's definitely something that can be learned. It happens when we're paying attention to what is going on around us, not just to what we are doing. So remember that difference between execution and leverage and positioning. So if you're execution mode, you're only thinking about you. You're only thinking about how it's going to impact you. If you are thinking broader, if you were thinking about your positioning and your leverage, you're looking at the broader connections that can be made. You also want to consider the difference between task level problems and then the higher level strategic problems. So I think this is an area, if we're talking about what is going to get you to that next level, what's going to help with your positioning, this is one of the main ones. When I work with my mid to higher career people on their resumes, this is the main switch that we have to make when we talk about skills. It's not just about the tasks anymore. We are looking at strategic problem solving. We are looking at proactive problem solving, the bigger picture of the position and what it requires and what it looks like within the organization. So that is something where you have to start to shift your thinking. And it's a skill that I think I see most often in that transition from execution to leveraging. So you have to start to think in this skills conversation, am I only executing on my position? Am I only building skills relevant to my position? And for some of you, you are, because that's where you're at in your career. But for others of you, you are experts in your position. You understand what to do. You're already there and you're ready to expand that skill set. And that skill set has to expand into range. It has to expand into connections and strategy, practical strategy, not the career strategy, but practical business strategy. And it has to look at solving different problems, not your problems in your specific position, but it has to look at the larger picture. What are the bigger problems that are going on, and how can you be the one to help identify and solve those problems? Next, I want to talk about reputation leverage. This is going to be hard. This is going to be hard for some of you because some of you don't have a reputation, or you have a bad reputation, and you have to figure out what that is. And you have to be honest with yourself. When I talk about realistic reality from the Control Your Career process, this is one of the hardest conversations I have with my clients, is how are you perceived? Not your intention, not what you have convinced yourself was the right thing to do, say, or be, but what do people assume about you? What is your true reputation in your organization and outside of your organization? Are you consistent with who you are and how you show up? Are people going to talk about you the same way, regardless of where they're at in your career journey? You have to have a strong reputation. And I know for many of you, this is going to be the gap, either because you haven't put effort into building into building the reputation, or for whatever reason, the reputation isn't good. And for some of you, I know you're going to be dealing with retaliation. You're going to be dealing with a manager that doesn't like you, or a coworker that doesn't like you. If that's the case and you cannot turn it around, you no longer have leverage in that position. And then we have to have a different conversation about whether or not this is the position for you. Okay? Hard conversations have to be had when it comes to reputation. You have to understand the weight that your name carries in your organization and in your field. And if it doesn't carry any weight, then that is a gap, and that is something that has to change. So I want you to ask yourself, if you weren't in the room, what would people say about you? What words would they use to describe you? What would they say that you're trusted for? Those are the questions that you have to answer for yourself. Okay, market leverage. I do not like talking about this because the market is wild right now. And I don't know where it's going to go. But we cannot assume that it's going to go anywhere positive right now. And honestly, you really can't assume that. Some of you are in situations where you're like, the market's fine where I'm at. I don't have a problem. That's great. There are a lot of people that don't have that privilege. And so we have to speak to both sides of it. So here's how I'm going to differentiate this though. So market leverage is not about internal positioning, which we are going to talk about internal positioning in the next episode. So stay tuned for that. But market leverage is external. This is everything external. And I find that this is a huge gap for people because they're so tired. They're so burnt out in their current position. They're trying to manage in their current position that they don't put any time and effort into what's happening outside of their organization. Okay. So when I think about market leverage, I think about your reputation externally. So we just talked about reputation. So this is a little bit of that, but this is externally. So are you relevant in your field? Do people know you outside of your organization? Are you visible enough that if something happened in your current organization, you would have people that you could go to externally that could help you out? Networking. Okay. This is what it is. All right. You have to have relationships with people outside your organization that are people who are strategic. All right. You have to understand who you are and how your skills are going to translate in the market externally. So are you hireable outside of your current organization? One of the things that I want you to think about here are professional associations. And I know half of you just rolled your eyes at me because you think that they're dumb or you don't want to do them. Fine. That's a choice that you're making. However, a good professional association, professional group, it does not have to be related to your field, though that is the best option. But that is a way for you to be visible externally. That is a way for you to grow skills that you can't grow in your current position. So if you do not have any external connections, if you're not external to your organization, you lack that market leverage, which if something happens in your current position, it's going to be that much harder for you to transition if something happens, right? So again, we're helping you create that career leverage and you have to understand where you stand. If you are not ready to start the professional association thing, start posting on LinkedIn, start posting on social media, talk about the work that you do, create a professional external persona so that people start to know who you are professionally. Okay. I cannot stress this enough. Market leverage is staying connected and visible enough that you have options, even if you don't have to use them yet. Think about that. All right, financial leverage. Now, thankfully, I have an episode where I brought on my good friend Natalie, and we had a very extensive conversation about finances, about financial leverage, even though we didn't use that term. That is really what we were talking about. And I'm going to link that into the blog post for this episode. I highly recommend you go watch that if you want to understand financial leverage a little bit more. But here's what financial leverage does. Financial leverage gives you decision-making power. So we are no longer making decisions because we're desperate. We're making decisions because we have choices, because if something were to happen financially, we know that we're going to be okay. When finances are tight, when we don't have savings, when we don't have investments, when we don't have any of those extra financial components that you need to feel secure, your leverage gets considerably smaller because now we're making decisions out of desperation. And I know that a lot of you are in that position and have been in that position. And that's why this is an important conversation to have. And I want you to dig deeper in that episode with Natalie so that you can start positioning yourself well financially so that you can have that leverage. Financial stability allows you to make different decisions. It allows you to make much more strategic career decisions than what you can do right now. So that is what I want you to think about. And this is not about like, oh, I need to have millions and millions of dollars. It's not about that. It's about flexibility. You need enough so that you can make good career decisions that allow you to be happy and be content in the work that you're doing so that you can live a good life. That's really what this is about. Okay, that segues very nicely into decision leverage. This is also going to be a hard one. This is going to be a hard one for some of you because you've made decisions that you regret in your career. Decision leverage is your ability to choose strategically instead of reactively. So this is all about using your choices wisely. Now, unfortunately, some of you have been in situations where you've been pushed into positions, you've been recommended for things, and they weren't the right things, and that happens. When we reflect on our career, we have to look back and go, I know this wasn't the best decision, but here's what I learned from it. Here's what I got from it, and we're going to make better decisions moving forward. You can have a bunch of leverage buckets. You can have skill leverage, reputation leverage, you can have market leverage, and you can still make short-term decisions that limit your trajectory. For a lot of people, where I see this happen is they stay at their position for too long. That's a choice. Or they make the wrong move out of the organization. And a lot of times it's because they just didn't know, and they couldn't have known. And that is a hard realization, but it doesn't mean that you still can't pivot again. And so that's where understanding what leverage you have and then being able to pivot again can be to your advantage. But everything that you do is making a decision. So even as you go through all these buckets, you are making decisions and you're recognizing the decisions that you've already made that got you here. And you're making decisions on what to do next. Okay. Decisions. I know this is going to be, I think, a tough section because some of you want this and you're just not quite there yet. And some of you are realizing where you had this and it didn't work out the way that you wanted. So think of it this way. Decision leverage is what keeps you from trading the long-term positioning for short-term relief. And sometimes the short-term relief has to happen. So even though, we want to be strategic, we want to do all these things, one of the conversations I have with clients a lot, especially clients that are in burnout, is sometimes you just need to get out of the position and into something else. And we do the something else for a year or however long so that we can heal, we can come back to ourselves, and then we can make strategic decisions. So not everything is going to be, ride or die decision making about your career. A lot of you want that, but sometimes we have to make a choice that is going to be the short-term relief. And I know I'm contradicting myself here, but that's because I've watched it happen with my clients. So there's the ideal, and then there's the situation that you're in that you have to deal with. So I want you to think about that. But what does decision leverage look like? Okay. And again, some of you are going to be like, oh, I've had this and I don't have it now. And that's okay. We're going to build it back up. So decision leverage is when you don't have to accept the first opportunity just because it's available. You have the ability to say no. You can evaluate the scope of a position, the exposure that position's going to have, and the potential future positioning, not just looking at the title. And I cannot stress this enough. So many people just focus on the title and they are not looking at the actual job description, and they're not asking the right questions around where is this position going to take me in my career. You can say no without panic. This is huge. Most of my clients are in this situation, thankfully, where they want the right strategic advantage and they have the ability to say no because they know what they want. You think about what a move is going to set you up for next, not just what it fixes today. Now, remember, sometimes we need the position that fixes today. So that's a very specific situation to you. But an ideal situation is you are making a transition that is the right move for the next step in your career, whatever that looks like. Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're moving up. Sometimes you want to move back or you want a lateral move because that's just what makes sense for you right now. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's that you understand what it's doing for your career and where you're at right now. And then you get to choose projects that stretch your range, that are exciting, that are fun for you, that aren't just about increasing the workload. So if we think about internal leverage, that's where a lot of this would come into play. So there's a lot of decisions that you can make internally in your organization, such as choosing the right projects that are going to put you on the right team in front of the right leaders in order to help you get to where you want to be within that organization, if that's what you want. So something that I see happen with clients and some of the decisions that I've seen them make that I think is helpful to understand is somebody who turns down a promotion that will lock them in to a really specific path. And it's not a path that they want to go down. And so instead of taking the promotion, the bigger title, and more money, they end up leaving an organization and taking a lateral position. And so many people will say, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Because they knew that if they took this position, it was going to put them in a different space that they did not want to be in. They had the right level of decision-making leverage. They understood themselves. They knew their reality. They knew their personality. They knew themselves. And they knew that making a lateral move into another organization where they would have more exposure was going to get them to the right type of position for them. And then we have to think long-term there, right? So making that lateral move, while financially probably isn't going to help you out, the result in 3 to 5 years, when you get the even bigger promotion than you would have got in the other organization, that's when it's going to pay off. Obviously, it doesn't always happen that way, but I've seen it happen that way. And that's the example that I want you to think about as you're making these decisions, whether it's a promotion opportunity or an opportunity to leave the organization. So what does weak decision leverage look like? I feel like I need to identify this so that you can identify it for yourself and understand whether it's something that you have dealt with. So weak decision-making looks like taking something because it feels urgent. And remember, we talked about when that's okay. Leaving because you're frustrated this week. That's something we probably need to dig deeper into from a coaching perspective. But, it's okay to get frustrated. Not everything's going to be perfect, but we're not going to make decisions based on that unless there is a level of abuse that has to be figured out there. Saying yes because you don't want to disappoint someone. I've seen a lot of clients make those decisions. I've made that decision before. It's not good. We can't make career decisions based on other people. Has to be for us. We have to understand who we are. But I see this happen so much. It's not uncommon, but we have to get out of doing it. And then another one I see happen a lot, optimizing only for compensation without thinking about trajectory. So you're designing your career purely around how much money can I make, how quickly can I make how much money? And you're not really thinking about where that's going to lead you. I've seen a lot of clients get into this and then they hate their careers. In that kind of mid to late career, they hate where they're at and they feel like they can't get out. You can. I have some episodes on that plus coaching, but you have to really think about who am I and where do I want to go in my career, not just where is the most money going to get me. Some of you are going to think that way and that's fine, but you, again, have to understand, is that going to help you with leverage? You always want to be asking yourself, what does this decision set me up for next? Where is it going to take me next? It can't just be about, oh, this is better than what I'm doing right now. So obviously it's a good decision. It might not be. It might, but it might not be. So take some time to reflect on your last 2 to 3 major career decisions. What did that look like? Were you expanding what's possible within your career, within your influence? Or were you getting narrowed into something that maybe wasn't the best fit? Only you can answer that. So in this episode, we walked through 5 forms of leverage. I'm calling them buckets. I don't know if that's the best, but here we are. Skill leverage is what you are actually capable of doing and how broadly you can apply it. Reputation leverage is how you're perceived and what you're trusted with when you're not in the room. Market leverage is how relevant you are beyond your current organization. Financial leverage is how much flexibility you have when a decision needs to be made. And decision leverage is how wisely you use all of these buckets when opportunities show up. You don't have to have everything developed perfectly. You likely will not. We all have gaps in leverage, and that's okay. But you need to know where you have the most leverage and where you do have those gaps, because that is going to determine how much choice you actually have in your career, how much control you actually have in your career. Now, in the next episode, we are going to go inside your organization and we are going to look at where leverage is actually built in the day-to-day so that you are not guessing about it. It's going to be a very applicable strategic episode, so you're not going to want to miss it. Please make sure that you're subscribed again so that you don't miss these future episodes. And please share this episode with somebody that really is ready for something more, but they need to figure out what leverage they have beyond just the execution of their own career. And I'm going to be including, again, a bunch of resources and other podcast episodes into the show notes and blog post for this episode, so you can check that out if you want to dig a little bit deeper. I'll see you next time, and remember, you control your career.